Hey guys, we're on Unit 10 and this is day 4. We're going to talk about slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines on a graph. So in our warm-up, we have to determine the equation of a line that goes through the points -8, -1, and 4, -10. And since they said equation of a line, don't forget that's the form y equals mx plus b. We need to know the m and the b. We need to know the slope and the y-intercept. Good news, we have a formula for slope. Y's to the sky, and so don't forget that our y's go on top. All right, it doesn't matter what order. So I'm going to put the -10 first, minus my other y coordinate of -1. On the bottom, I have to choose the same order. So because I started with -10, I have to start with 4 minus my other x coordinate of -8. All right, -10 plus 1 on the top is going to put me at -9. And on the bottom, that's really 4 plus 8, which is 12. And if I reduce -9 over 12, that reduces to -3 over 4. I'll give that a little circle. We are halfway there. All right. Next up, I have to find b, which is the y-intercept. And b is going to be found by replacing the y, the m, and the x of the equation. And I am going to stick with 4, -10 as my y and my x replacement. And then my slope that I found here will replace the m. All right. So y is first to be replaced with -10. Keep the equal sign. My m is replaced with -3/4 times my x value, which is 4, plus b, so I can solve for it. All right. Do a little multiplication. -3/4 times 4 is -3. And then I'm going to go ahead and add 3 so that b is by itself. Okay. And -10 plus 3 is -7. And now I have my b. So now it's time to take my two pieces and write the equation of my line. And my line will be y equals -3/4 x minus 7. And there is the equation of my line. All right, so when they ask you to write the equation of a line that is parallel or perpendicular, parallel lines and perpendicular lines have something in common with their slopes. So since parallel lines are lines that never intersect, they have to have the same slopes, okay? For perpendicular lines, they're a little bit trickier, okay? It's not as easy as just keeping the slope the same for parallel lines. Perpendicular lines form right angles, and therefore they intersect, so their slopes can't be the same. But what their slopes are what they call negative reciprocals of each other. All right, so perpendicular lines are the tough ones. So we're going to practice what a negative reciprocal is before we get into writing the equation of a perpendicular line. So they want to know what the negative reciprocal of each of the following is. So what you have to first see is that your slope here is positive, which means our negative reciprocal will have the opposite sign. So it'll have to be negative. And then a reciprocal is a flipping of a fraction. So if I flip 1 over 3, I get 3 over 1. Okay? And that really is just the slope of -3. So a slope of 1/3 and a slope of -3 are negative reciprocals of each other. Okay? So trying the next one. Here our slope is negative, which means our answer has to be positive in order to be the negative part. They have to be opposite signs. Okay? And a reciprocal is a flipping of a fraction. So if you need to make the number into a fraction in order to flip it, then make it into a fraction. So now you're flipping 1 over 1, okay, which flips to 1 over 1. All right. And positive 1 over 1 is the same thing as a slope of 1. And so now we can see that a slope of -1 has a negative reciprocal of positive 1. Okay. And one more to go. Here our slope is positive 2, which means our answer has to be negative. That's the negative part, opposite signs. Okay. And then a reciprocal, again, is a flipping of a fraction. So if you need to make it a fraction in order to flip it, okay, so 2 over 1 will flip to 1 over 2. And now we can see that our slope of positive 2 has a negative reciprocal of -1/2. All right, and so that's what a negative reciprocal is. So you got to make sure you do both things. Change the sign of what the slope is and flip the fraction of what the slope is. Okay, So in number 2, it says if a line has a slope of negative 2/3, then each line parallel to it has a slope of also negative 2/3. Because up here, don't forget, we said same slopes for lines that are parallel. They have to be tilted the same, which means they have to have the same slope. Okay. And if they ask us each line that's perpendicular to it has a slope of, this is the negative reciprocal one for perpendicular. So take a look, our slope is negative, so our slope has to be positive. And 2/3, the reciprocal of that would be 3/2. All right, and so that is the negative reciprocal. All right, so now let's focus on writing the equation of the line that they ask us, okay? Except we got one more thing to talk about, right? If they give us two lines, they could ask us if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither, like in question number 3. So it says, are the lines with the equations parallel, perpendicular, or neither? So again, parallel, perpendicular all depend on the slope. So what's nice about this equation of this line is that I can see that the slope, because it's in y equals form, is 2. The equation of this line is also in y equals form, and I can also see that the slope here is negative 2. So right now, these are not the same. Not the same. So that tells me they are not parallel. Okay. Now, are they negative reciprocals of each other? Well, they are opposite signs, but if I flip 2, first make it a fraction, and I flip it, I would get 1/2. And that's not the slope of the second line. And so we're going to go ahead and say not negative reciprocals. And so I can conclude that they are not perpendicular. Okay. Therefore, we're going to go ahead with neither. Okay. They are not parallel. They are not perpendicular. So these two lines, they probably intersect each other, but they don't intersect each other to form right angles. Okay. So we're going to go to number 4. And it says write the equation of a line that's parallel to y minus 3x equals 5 and passes through the point 1,6. Okay, so first off, the equation of the line they gave us, not in good form like in number 3. It's not in y equals form, but we can get it there quickly if we just go ahead and we add that 3x to the other side. And so now we end up with a line whose equation is y equals 3x plus 5. And now I can see that the slope is 3. And then remember the key word that they told us was parallel, not perpendicular. So parallel is easy because my slope of my parallel line will also be the same, 3. We're going to give that a little circle. Okay. So because we have to write the equation of a line, we have to know the slope, which we now know, but we also have to know the y-intercept. So we're going to go ahead and write y equals mx plus b. Remember that anytime you solve for the y-intercept, that you have to replace the first 3 variables. Because it passes through the point 1,6, 6 is going to be my replacement for y. My parallel slope, which is 3, will be my replacement for m. And then my x will be replaced with 1. We'll do a little math here. We'll get b by itself. And b comes out to be 6 minus 3, which is 3. And now I can go ahead and write the equation of my line using the 2 parts that I found. Okay? So my slope has to be 3 in order to be parallel. Okay? And then my y-intercept to pass through that 0.16 also has to be 3. And there it is. Okay? Let's take a look at last one on this page. All right, in number 5, it says write the equation of a line that is perpendicular to 2x plus 3y equals 6 and passes through the point 2,4. So again, they give me the equation of the line, but again, it's not in good form. It's not in y equals form. Okay, this one's going to take us a little bit longer to get there. I'm going to go ahead and subtract the 2x. That way I get 3y equal to negative 2x plus 6. And to get y by itself, I have to get rid of the 3. So I'm going to divide everybody by 3. And that's going to give me y equals negative 2/3 x plus 2. And now I can tell what my slope is. My slope is negative 2/3. And now look at the word that they told you in the problem. That word is perpendicular. Perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. So my slope of my perpendicular line has to have the opposite sign. So my slope has to be a positive. And flipping 2/3 would be 3/2. Okay, we're going to give that a little circle because that's the slope I have to have. Okay, now time to find the b, or the y-intercept. So we're going to write down y equals mx plus b. And remember, we have to replace the first three variables in order to solve for b. Because it has to pass through the point 2, 4, y is going to get replaced with the 4. The m is going to get replaced with the slope I just found, which is 3/2. Make sure you use the perpendicular slope, not the slope of the original line, which is why I had circled it. So I focused my direction on what I circled to replace my m. And then x is going to get replaced with the 2. And we're going to leave b, b. All right, we're going to do a little math. 3/2 times 2 is 3. And then to solve for b, we're going to subtract the 3. And b comes out to equal 1. We're going to give it a little circle. And now that I found my two pieces, I can write the equation of my line, which would be y equals my perpendicular slope, which is 3/2, followed by x, plus my y-intercept of 1. And there's the equation of my line. All right. I'll see you guys on the back side for the rest.